just tell you what this course that I'm doing here is going to help prepare you for the state exam. Okay. Um, Unfortunate thing about the course, most everything I'm going to be teaching you here in the next 5 weeks, you probably use very, very small percent, less than 10% in real life. But everything I'm teaching you is what you need to know to pass the state exam. Now, as I go through these lectures every Monday and Wednesday night, um, there are questions at the end of every chapter, and I'd like you to go over and answer these questions. Plus, you have to do the chapter quizzes through the school online, and you have to complete those in order to qualify to take the state exam. Now, if any of you have any questions at all about something I'm talking about, you don't understand what I'm saying, just type in a message saying, could explain that again. I didn't understand that part. I'd be more than happy to do that for all of you. Anytime I tell you to, I might say underline or put an X by something, make sure you do. The X's mean these are questions that will show up on the final that you have to take and also on the state exam. Things that I tell you to highlight or underline are things that you need to know as well. So I've got a question here. Let me see what it is. Can we take the quizzes multiple times? Yes, you can. You will get the answer once you get, if you get the question wrong, they'll give you the answer. Sure, you can. Now, some of you have the platinum package, which includes, you're welcome, which includes there's 540 questions. Now, I'm revamping the 540 questions. The law has changed 4 times in the last 12 months. So we updated all our book. Our textbook is completely updated. Now, the only thing I have to work on this past week, not the only thing I have to do, but I will be working on a 540 question, and I'll be updating that this week. That'll be, you don't need that right now, but that'll be ready to go for all of you in, sometime next week for sure. So, okay, Chuck, thank you for joining us. Yeah, you have to, 75 is passing. Okay, 75 is passing. So you keep doing it till you get to your 75. Now, I want to talk about the state exam. On the state exam, you have, actually, there's 105 questions that what we call the national portion, which covers chapters 1 through 15. You will have 45 questions on what's called the Illinois law portion, which is mostly chapters 16, but also 11 and 13 as well. 11 and 13, when we cover those, they're all going to be duplicated in more detail in chapter 16. Now, you are required to get a 75% on each one of these on a state, and then you will be, then you had to activate your license with the sponsoring broker. I'm going to explain that to you. So once you pass our state exam with Illinois through PSI, and we'll give you instructions how to do that, you have to find a sponsoring broker to work for. You cannot sell real estate unless you have a sponsoring broker. That's the guy that, or the woman that owns the office. I'm going to give you some tips right now, actually, about finding a sponsoring broker. The one thing that right now, all of you need to focus and concentrate on this information that I'm going to be giving you over the next 5 weeks. And then after you get done with that, then you should start interviewing with sponsoring brokers. Now, you should interview with sponsoring brokers. I'm saying you are interviewing with them. What I want is that you got to find out, you want to know what your costs are. Some have no cost, some have a lot of costs, some have monthly fees. There's legal fees, there's errors and omission, there's marketing fees, there's technology fees. So you got to make sure you know exactly what it is. You should pick out an office in the area that you want to do business in, the area that you're familiar with. Also, uh, training is the key to being successful right away. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen to many of you, almost all of you, when you start interviewing. You're going to run into sponsoring brokers, and they're going to tell you, forget about making any money in the next 6 months or 12 months. It's going to take over a year for you to start making some money, to start putting some deals together. Now, if a sponsoring broker told me that, I'm out of that office as quick as I can. You need to find out a sponsoring broker that will help you get productive right away, like in the next 30 days. They should be able to do that. Training is a big part of it. Find out about their training program, what kind of training program they have. Some have great training programs, some don't. Now, I manage a big real estate office on the far north side. Um, I'm a certified trainer. I'm certified by Century 21, Coldwell Banker, Remax, Sotheby's, and Keller Williams. I'm certified by those companies. So I know what training is. I've probably thrown a lot of that in our class discussions as well, because I think that's so important so you know how to do things correctly. Make sure another thing is, where do the leads come from? How do they help out the agents in the office with leads? I was talking to this was a few months ago, I was talking to a managing broker of an office. And she says, Sam, you got to come to my office. I go, why? She goes, I get over 100, I make over 100 sales a year. That's what she told me. I go, sure. Anytime any leads come into the office, I says, you take those leads. She goes, no, no, no. I distribute leads to agents. Yeah, you distribute the crap that you don't want. If you're just sitting behind a desk, how are you getting over 100 sales a year? So she's just taking all those leads. How do they distribute those leads? Whether are they coming through the internet? Do they come in through the door? Do they come in through other websites? Or do they work with different lenders and things like that? How do they get their leads? So that's what you got to find out. And then another thing I think is very important, um, does the managing broker and the sponsoring broker, do they list and sell real estate? Because if they're listing and selling real estate on a regular basis, they're not in the office helping you develop your business. So those are things you have to cover. And I probably talk more about that towards the end of the course too, as well. So I know how that is. I know that's very important. I don't list and sell. The sponsoring broker doesn't list and sell. I have a big office. I have 185 agents. I don't have time to list and sell. Those agents keep me busy, believe me. Um, so, and one more thing that I want to tell you, all of you. Now, we're taking this course. You're going to be licensed in about 6 weeks from now. Here's what you need to do. You need to get on Facebook, contact Twitter, everyone that you know, and let them know that you're right now you're in the taking your real estate class, and you're going to be licensed very, very soon. Because I'm telling you, if you don't do this, what's going to happen in a couple of months from now, you're going to see one of your friends or relatives, and they're going to tell you about the great investment property or the house that they bought, or they just listed their property. Well, why didn't you call me? Why can't, they didn't know you were going for your real estate license. And I'm telling you, your friends and family members will wait for you. So you got to let everyone know now that, hey, I'm excited. I'm taking a real estate class. I'm going to be licensed very soon. The real estate market is excellent right now. I want to say that. This is a great time to get into real estate, even with COVID, what's going on. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. The first reason is that a lot of people back in October, November, December, who had their property on the market, took their property off the market for the holidays, which they're going to put back on the market in the springtime. What happened in the springtime? Well, COVID happened, and that delayed everything. Those are the people you got to go after, and there's a way of doing it, just hitting the expires, but I'll talk about that later. Interest rates, less than 2.9%. they're unbelievably low. There's a lot of first-time home buyers. 40% of the home buyers this year in 2020 are going to be first-time home buyers. Never been that high ever in history. The highest I saw was around 30, 32, but it's going to be 40%. A lot of people want to get out of condos and apartment buildings. They don't want to live in a condo where there's 1,000 people ahead of them that touch the doorknob or the elevator building or the laundry room. They got swimming pools that no one could use because there's restrictions on that. People are a big demand right now is for single family homes. People want to be isolated in their own home, and they don't want to be sharing the lobby with, like I said, with hundreds of people every single day. So because of the interest rate, because people want to be more isolated, um, because of the delays that happened in 2020. Plus, one more thing, we got 2 months away from the election. Let me tell you something. Both sides, Democrats, Republicans, guess what's not going to happen? They're not raising taxes now. Yeah, after the election, I'm sure that's going to happen. It's not happening now. So they're trying to get as many people to vote for them. So it's the market's very, very favorable now for everyone. So all of you need to uh, get in on all that information that I'm giving. I have a question. So better go with a big brokerage or a small brokerage? Well, you know what, Charles, it's really up to you. A big name, Berkshire Hathaway, Coldwell Banker, Century 21, they could get you in the door, but it's always up to you. It's always up to you. So, um, usually the smaller offices, the small brokerage company, not that there's anything wrong with them, and many of those offices, well, most offices, sponsoring broker list and sells real estate. They don't have a formal training program. They do not. So that's why some of the bigger companies, they do have formal training, as long as they have great follow-up, which some do and some don't. I'll talk more about training, as I said, as we go along. So now, there are all your questions in the back of the book on the master exam, on the quizzes, and the state exam. There are 4 possible answers. Almost every single question, you're going to find out if you do these questions, almost every question, you have 2 good answers, and then you have 2 bad answers. Well, you can eliminate the bad answers right away. Now you got 2 good answers. What I mean by saying good answers, they're both right to one degree or another, except that you get no points for having the second best answer. So you got to really comprehend everything that we're doing. You got to read all 4 answers before you pick out one. I'm going to give you more tips about testing as we go along. Now, you have math problems. And guess what I'm going to be? Well, here's a problem with everyone. As soon as they get out of school, they're a part of your brain that studied math really goes into retirement immediately. So guess what we're going to be doing? We're going to do a lot of math. You have 13 math questions on a state exam. Out of 150 questions on a state, there's 13 math problems. I'm going to cover every single one of the math problems. I have the examples, almost word for word, what's going to be on there. And there's a lot of math that we're going to be doing, but I'm going to help you through this. I don't want you to get worried about this. The way I teach the math is as if none of you know any math. So as I'm going through this, people will say, "But Sam, yeah, there's a quicker way of doing this. You can do a shortcut." I go, "I know the shortcut, but not everyone's at the same level. So that's why I teach it as if none of you have any math skills at all." Now we're going to be learning fractions because that's involved. We're going to be learning algebra, and guess what? A little bit of geometry as well. But I don't want you to worry about any of this. I promise you, I get you through all the math. Okay, I have the exact examples. Plus, now besides our textbook, that 540 question math, not 540 practice exam. There are videos on every single chapter, and you can review these videos as often as you want. We have audios on all 16 chapters, plus Appendix A. I put that together for all of you. Most of those math problems are taken right off the state exam. maybe a little bit of difference in the numbers, but the questions are the same. It's called Appendix A, which I did a video on that as well. So I like you to go ahead and make sure you follow that video, and I think you will be okay. If not, just ask me and I'll help you with any questions that you might have. So as I said, the market's really, really good. I'll make this class, as fun as I can. Everyone's at home right now. Maybe if you want to, it's evening, pour yourself a small glass of wine. I don't want you to pass out by the break time or something like that, but I just want you to relax a little bit and get through this. Before I get started, does anyone have any question about the real estate market or about this class? Just go ahead and ask me, and I'll be more than happy to help you out with that too. Okay, well, everyone should have a textbook. If it has been mailed to you, it should be very shortly, but you can also download everything I'm going to go after. I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to put it up on the screen in a few moments too. In one moment. Actually now. So let me get to our textbook. Okay, now this first few pages here is more of an introduction to real estate. They said there are many different specialties in the real estate business. Now the brokerage business is the business of bringing people together. Our business is about bringing buyers and sellers together, not about finding houses. Houses are there. Millions of houses. Go outside, there's millions of houses out there. Our job is to find people that have a real estate need, people that need to buy or sell real estate or lease real estate or to invest into real estate. That's our business. It's a people finding business, not finding houses. They're out there. Finding people. That's why you need to make your contacts. And I hope all of you will do that. If not today, by tomorrow, just let everyone know that you're just started your real estate class. Now, as far as appraisals, we have a whole chapter on appraisal. Chapter 7 will deal with appraisal. One problem that we ran into, and sometimes people overpay for a property, and then they over-improve their property. Or sometimes people want more money for their property than the value of their property. Buyers today are very, very sophisticated, more so today than any other time in history. They know the value of property. I'll tell you why. Buyers, before they even call up a real estate agent for the very first time, they've been searching on the internet for at least 3 to 4 weeks. They're very, very sophisticated. They do know the value of real estate. Again, more so today than any time in history. Sometimes buyers want to try, or sellers want to get a lot more for their property. They just think they can. They got this emotional attachment to it. They know the value of their property. Let's say the value of the property is $450,000. But Sam, can't we try it a little bit higher? I mean, can we list this for, let's say, $550? I mean, I could use the money. It'd be nice to get the extra money for it. Yeah, here's a problem with it. People that could afford $450,000 are not looking at properties at $550. People who could afford $550, the moment they walk into that property, they know it's overvalued. They walk right out. You totally missed the market. People are very, very much informed. And let's say, for example, for some reason, some guy fell out of a tree, landed on his head, and paid $550,000 for property that's only worth $450. Guess what happens? It doesn't appraise out. It doesn't appraise out, doesn't close. Doesn't close, you don't get paid. Overpriced listing takes more time, effort, energy, and money just to try to get that property sold. And even if it does sell, doesn't appraise out, doesn't close. So you got to learn to walk away from overpriced listings. Property management's a real estate specialization. We have a whole chapter 15 on property management. Now, you look at the stock market. It's so volatile every day. One day it's up, 400, next day it drops 500. I don't know about the stock market. I don't understand it. A lot of people are saying it's overvalued, but because of the interest rate, a lot of people are buying investment property. Problem is they don't know how to manage investment property, so there's a bigger demand for um, property managers. A lot of people are getting into investments for real estate. Financing, we have a whole chapter. Chapter 6 deals with financing. Um, you should never take a buyer out to show them any property unless you have them qualified or at least pre-qualified, but you want them pre-approved by a lender. You want them pre-approved by a lender. Because I tell you what happens. Here's a big mistake a lot of real estate agent makes. Let's say that there's um, a buyer calls the office or calls you up and says they saw a sign on a property and they want to see it. So you go out there and you show them that property. And they love the property and they want to buy it. So now you bring them back to the office and you have them qualified by lender. Now the property's on the market for 350,000. Now you find out that they can only afford at the most 300,000. They can't afford 350. So now you take them out and you show them homes at 300,000. Well, guess what? They don't like anything you show them at 300,000. Well, Sam, you know that first house you showed me? Yeah, you mean the one at 350 that you can't afford? Yeah. I was wondering if you could find a property like that for 300,000. Well, no, I can't. It doesn't exist. There's a lot of difference in a house between 300 and 350. They're going to compare everything to that $350,000 home. Chances of me, it's easier for that buyer to go out and rob a bank for 50,000 than me trying to find a $350,000 home for 300,000 because it doesn't exist. I mean, they do this thing, and then you can't bring them down. They compare everything to that first home. Yeah, but I like that first home. I like the area. I like everything about it. Well, yeah, I know, but you can't afford it. This is what you could afford. You can't bring them down. It's really hard to talk them down into accepting it. Subdivision and development. There's a lot of that going on. A lot of that's going on in Chicagoland area, but on a much smaller scale. See, lenders are kind of leery about making investments or loans on huge projects because they took the hit, and that's still fresh in their memory 15 years ago, or 13 years ago. So now they are doing financing projects, but they're on a much smaller scale. Home inspections. Well, you should always encourage your buyers to get a professional home inspector. Now, I said professional, someone that's certified, someone that's licensed. You know what a lot of buyers do? They bring in the world's worst home inspector to inspect their property. The world's worst home inspector. Let me give you the name of the world's worst home inspector. They're called mom and dad. Let me tell you something about your parents. Someone can buy a brand new home, $1 million they pay for it, and I guarantee the parents are going to go there and find 100 things wrong with them. That's a parent's job because they don't want to hear the music later when something breaks down. But Dad, you said the house was fine. Well, I didn't know the air conditioner was going to break down or whatever might go wrong with the property. So always encourage them to get a professional home inspector. I mean, parents are not going to say anything positive about a property. They just don't. They don't like any choices that their children make. They never do. They never do. You think about the time when you first start dating someone, and for some reason, parents don't like your date. They don't like them. They hate them, actually. I don't know why. I don't know why they hate them. They got, maybe they don't like all the tattoos on their face or all the piercing or something. They hate them. They might want to take them on a little hunting trip. Hope they don't have an accident or something like that. For real, that's what parents do. Or they say, I'm going to bring my cousin to inspect the property. My cousin's been in construction for 20 years. Really? What does your cousin do? Well, you know the guy that pushes the wheelbarrow full of debris into the dumpster? Yeah. Well, that's what my cousin does. He doesn't even know how to hold a screwdriver. They're going to bring them to inspect the property. People are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for a property, and they're not going to spend another $350 or $400 to bring a professional home inspector. The home inspection, on the average, is between minimum 3 hours to as much as 4 hours long for a home inspection. Counseling. Counseling is, to me, it's so important. I told you, I've been in business for a long time, about 38 years, 37 years, I think. And I don't listen to sell real estate now because I manage a huge office. But what I do is, when I did used to sell real estate, before I would take a buyer out, if you called me up, you're a buyer, and said, Sam, I want to look at some properties. Well, before you and I will look at one home, you and I are going to sit down together in my office. We're going to spend an hour, and you're going to tell me exactly what you're looking for in a property. Now, I'm not talking about bedrooms and fireplaces. Those are features. I want to know more. I want to know your wants, your desires, your benefits that you're looking for in a home. I want to get a clear picture in my head, because what I do, once I have a really good idea within that hour, and also that time I also have you qualified by a lender, I have a good idea what you're looking for in a home. And I would tell you, I says, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Saturday, we're going to get together. Again, we're going to meet at the office. I'm going to take you out. I'm going to show you 3 or 4 properties. And there's a real good chance that you're going to find a property you like. So make sure you bring your checkbook with you. Well, Sam, I'm not ready to buy this Saturday. You're not? What will stop you from buying Saturday? I mean, if we found a house that you like. Well, my mother's on a waiting list. My mother-in-law's on a waiting list to get into a nursing home, and that might take about, 8 or 10 months for that one. I'm waiting for my last child to go off to college, and that's not going to happen for another year. So I'm not going to be ready for about 10, 12 months. Then why are we looking at a home this weekend? I tell you what, I'm going to stay in touch with you. We're not going to go and look at properties. We're not doing that until you're ready to buy. I don't know what people want. They want me to go out there and drive them around so they could get decorating ideas on my time. I don't have the time for that. I don't do that. So there are some people actually out there that they would tell me, "Oh, by the way, Sam, we always look at 100 homes before we buy one." The last 2 homes we bought, I looked at 100 homes before we bought that home. Oh, so you have to look at 100 homes before you buy one? Any way around that? He goes, no, that's what we do. I says, good. Thank you for telling me that up front, because now I'm going to refer you to another agent, an agent I don't like, and let that person go out there and show you 100 homes, because I'm not doing it. I'm telling you, I might preview 20, 25 homes. I'm going to narrow it down to 3 or 4 homes, and those are the right homes for you. People think they need to see 100 homes. They don't. They actually need to see only one if it's the right home for them. So I had this guy in my office, an experienced agent. He says, Sam, I don't know what to do. I've been taking out these clients every single weekend for the past year. They haven't bought a home yet. I says, you need to drop these people. Well, if I drop them now, I'm not going to make anything. I says, you just told me you've been taking them out every weekend for the past year. And they haven't bought a home. You haven't made anything anyways. These people are not going to buy. Then he asked me, he goes, Sam, is that what you would do? Would you drop these people? No, I wouldn't. If I sold people homes every weekend for a year, they did not buy a home. I tell you what, honestly, I would do. I'd take out my knife. I'd stab out both their eyes. I'd rather go to jail than to drive people around for a year showing them property every single weekend. I won't do that. I'd rather go to jail. Okay. Now, education. There's a lot of courses that agents could take to help them out with things, to specialize. You want to work with first-time home buyers. You want to work with empty nesters. These are the people that wound up, they're living in a big house by themselves. They're retired. We call them empty nesters. You might want to work with, it could be investors. You want to work commercial. You want to be a residential specialist. You want to be a specialist in distressed properties. That's all up to you. So you decide what you want it to do. I got another question here. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, Mia. Mia. I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you, I would do that. Victor, oh, you came back. You missed you need the first 4 sessions, right? So that's good, Victor. I know you're in my last class. I think you jumped in the middle of that one, so this will pick you up. Yeah, I think you need 4, maybe 5 courses. You'll be up to date. So, okay, very good. Now, let's skip down to about towards the bottom of this page where this is on page 2, types of real property. Now, it says here, just because there are areas of specializations within the real estate industry, there are different types of property in which to specialize in. Actually, what I like you to do in your books is put X's by these 5 bullets here. The 5 types of properties. Well, the first one is called residential properties. Now, residential properties, these are single-family homes. These are 2 flats, up to 4 units. Owner-occupied condos and townhomes are included. So residential property, single-family homes, condos, townhomes, and 2, 3, and 4 units, as long as they're owner-occupied, are considered residential. Commercial properties include apartment buildings, 5+ units, office buildings, shopping centers, all that's commercial. Number 3 is industrial, which is factories and warehouses. Number 4 is agricultural, which is farms and ranches. And number 5, or the last one, is called special purpose properties. These are unusual properties. They don't fit into any of these other categories. I'm talking about any type of government building, like a school, library, city hall, police station, firehouse. Stadiums fall into that. Cemeteries, churches, any house of worship fall into that special. Universities, hospitals all fall into that special purpose category. Now, supply and demand in the real estate market. The forces of supply and demand in the market. Supply and demand is just basic economic principles, simple, basic economic principle. For example, if there's a lot of homes for sale, there's a lot of supply of homes for sale, but there's no demand for the property. So if demand goes down, prices go down. Price always follows demand, and this is true of any commodity. Now, if there's very few homes for sale, but there's a bigger demand for single-family homes, as demand goes up, prices go up. Price always follows demand. Simple, basic economic principle right there. Now, let's get back to our textbook. Right there. Oops. There we go. Couldn't get my textbook back. Now, let's go on to the next page. Supply and demand in the real estate market. They said there are 2 characteristics of real estate that govern the way that the market reacts to supply and demand. That's uniqueness and immobility. Uniqueness means there are no 2 properties that are the same. I mean, they can look similar, but they can't occupy the same space. And you cannot move it. You cannot move land. I'm going to actually get into a little bit of detail about these 2 and one more a little bit later this evening, and a little bit in this evening. Now, let's skip down to factors affecting supply, labor force, and construction costs. Yes. Now, a shortage of skilled laborers will affect how long it takes a home to be built. There is a big shortage of skilled laborers in this country, not so much in the Chicagoland area, because most of the workers are we got union workers throughout the city here, or Chicagoland and suburbs. Um, in many parts of the country, I know areas like Florida and areas like Arizona, it takes about a year to build a home. From the time you excavate to the time you're done, it takes about a year. Where in Chicago, you could build a home on the average about 3.5 months, no more than 4. Why? You get a lot of people in those Florida and Arizona and other parts of the country. You get a lot of people out there to do the rough work, but you can't get the finishing workers out there, the finishing plasterers, the finishing carpenters. A finishing carpenter here in the Chicagoland area, union finishing carpenter makes $55 an hour plus benefits. A finishing carpenter in Florida earns about $18 an hour. Big difference. There's a shortage of skilled laborers and also a shortage of supplies. Actually, not so much a shortage of building supplies today, but lumber has gone up. The cost of lumber has gone up 60% in just the last month or two. It's gone up quite a bit. Not quite sure what the reason is. They're not. It's not like they're building a bunch of homes. I mean, they are every year, but not enough to meet the demand. Government controls could just again. I'll tell you when you have to put X by it, but they're talking about land use controls, building code, zoning, things like that. Government financial policies. We're talking about the interest rates or the discount the points that banks charge to help someone get the loans. And then that paragraph underneath there, you can highlight. We're going to actually all of these we talk about detail in upcoming chapters. Government agency, FHA, Federal Housing Administration, which allows people to buy a home with only 3.5% down. Department of Veterans Affairs, the VA, veterans are allowed to buy a home with no money down, up to 4 units owner occupied with no money down. I just helped an agent write up an offer for a veteran. 450,000 buying a 3 flat for 450. No money down. No money down. So now factors affecting demand. You can highlight population. As the population grows, the demand for housing grows too. Um, it's just a basic human need. You need shelter. Now, let's talk about demographics. You can highlight that one too. Demographics is where people get married, they want to buy a home. They have children, they need a bigger home. You know, when I was selling, I was so sorry when my friends would call me up and tell me that they're getting a divorce. So sorry to hear that. So glad they called me up because then they sell one home and then they buy 2 homes. They're getting divorced. They want to keep the children in the same school district, same school. So they have separate bedrooms that's 4 or 5 blocks away. And it was nice. It was nice for me, nice for other realtors. You sell one home and they each buy another one. I had a close friend of mine that was over almost $2.5 million. Sold a home for over $1 million, and they each bought a home, one for 600, one for 700, just like that, because they got divorced. I'm so glad. I was so sorry they got divorced. I'm so glad they called me. So demographics. Employment and wage levels. Well, people have to have jobs. They don't have jobs, they're not going to be able to qualify for a mortgage. Now, that's one issue that we're running into right now. A lot of people have been laid off from their jobs the last couple of weeks. When they apply for a loan, they got to show at least 2 or 3 weeks worth of paycheck stubs before they could qualify to buy a home. And we've been running a little problem with that since March because of this COVID, because some people got laid off. So there's a handful of people, not a handful, a bunch of people. Now, let's go on to land, real estate, and real property. I want you to highlight, put an X under those paragraphs under land. It says land is defined as your surface extending downward to the center of the earth and upward into infinity, plus anything that's attached to it naturally, like grass and trees and rocks and boulders, all included in the definition of land. So what I want you to know is this. When you own land, not only do you own the surface of the land, you own the land underneath, all the way down to the center of the earth. You own the airspace above your property, all the way into infinity. That's what you own when you own land. Plus anything that's attached to it naturally, like grass and trees, so forth. Now, let's go to that next section here, where it says real estate. Highlight those, some paragraphs, only a few words, but highlight all three of them, put X's by these as well. Now, real estate is defined as the land at, above, and below the earth's surface, plus anything that's permanently attached to it, like a house, a fence, a garage, a sidewalk, a water line, sewer line. These are called improvements. Anything added by man is called a improvement. Anytime you add anything to real estate, becomes part of that real property. Now, real property, highlight, put X's by these. It says real property is defined as everything included in land and real estate, plus what they call your bundle of legal rights, which is your interests, benefits, and rights. Your bundle of legal rights. I'm going to come to that in just a little bit. Okay. Now, air rights, you can highlight that one. As I said, let me go back to my drawing. When you own land, not only do you own the surface of the land right here, the surface here, you own the airspace, and you can separate those. I can sell the air rights to one person, the surface of the land to another, and what's called mineral rights underneath to a third person. Let me give you a couple examples of air rights. On a corner of Madison and Canal in Chicago, right where Northwestern Railroad station is at. They sold the air rights above the railroad tracks to Citicorp. They built a 50-story building over there. Trains still run underneath. They sold the air rights, which they have a right to do. The Prudential building is built above the IC, Illinois Central tracks. So you can sell those air rights. You can separate them and sell them. You know, there's a little story, interesting story. There was, this is true, actually. This actually did happen. And what happened, there was a guy that owned a bunch of land. And let me just see if I could try to draw this out. So this guy owned all this land, and someone wanted to buy this land from him to build a business on it. Now, the street was right here. What this guy sold him, it was approximately 30 some acres, about 33 acres of land, all this land over here, except for this right here. It's a 100 feet wide strip of land by 1,500 feet long. That the guy kept for himself. He says, I'm going to sell you all this land over here, this 30 some acres, but I'm going to keep this little strip of land for me. I will lease this land to you. I'm going to lease it to you. And all I want is 5% of the profits of your business. That's all I want. And the guy needed the access to the sidewalk for the customers and everything else. Couldn't be locked out. So he made that deal with them. This happened in 66 to 1975. For 10 years, for leasing that strip of land, 100 feet by 1,500 feet long, for 5% of the profit, the guy made over, who owned the land, made over $120 million for 5% of the profits of this business. And that is a true story. The guy that owned the land, his name was Kurt Kerkorian, who owned a bunch of land and a bunch of casinos in Vegas in the mid-60s, late 60s, and he sold it to a guy named Jay Sarno. Actually, the location of the property is on a corner of a street called Las Vegas Boulevard and Flamingo Boulevard. The name of the business is called Caesar's Palace Casino. And that actually did happen. That's a true story. So this went on, and that Jay Sarno gave up over $100 million to this Kirk Kerkorian for leasing the land. But then Jay Sarno got an idea. He says, look, why don't you sell me the air rights? You keep the land. I want to buy the air rights, which he did. And once he bought the air rights, what he did, I don't know if anyone's ever been to Caesar's Palace. At this point over here, they have this moving sidewalk that takes you up and over this land and puts you right at the entrance of the casino. And there's another moving sidewalk that goes up and over that property and puts you at the entrance of the casino. Since he had the air rights, he didn't have to use his walk across his property anymore and didn't have to pay him any more money. But shortly thereafter, that Jay Sarno died mysteriously. Had a drink in his hand, but the glass disappeared and everything in there. And they didn't do an autopsy on him; they cremated him, and that was the end of that story. But I don't understand why this Jay Sarno couldn't work a better deal. See, this is 1966, and he could have taken Kurt out to the desert and kind of talked a better price for him. Bring a shovel, bring a couple bullets, would have been settled for a lot less, but he didn't do that for some reason. But actually, that is a true story. That did happen. So that's why they have the sidewalk over there. Now, so you can separate the air rights, and it's pretty common, a lot more common than people think. Now, bundle of legal rights. I'd like you to highlight, put an X by this paragraph. I want you to highlight, put an X by number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Your bundle of legal rights. Now, I want you to know this. Bundle of legal rights is included in the definition of real property. Your bundle of legal rights is included in the definition of real property. Now, your bundle of legal rights, I'm using those 5 things. I told you to highlight 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to use the same 5. I'm going to explain what they are, but I'm going to put them in a different order. I use the acronym DEEP C, Deep C. Now the D stands for disposition. Disposition means you could sell your property, you could give it away, you could lease it out, you could do nothing with it, you could pass it on upon your death in a will. That's what that disposition means. The first E stands for enjoyment. It's the same 5 that I gave you. Enjoyment means you can do whatever you want with the property within the law. Or, I'm sorry, enjoyment means use the property in any way you want to. Exclusion is the next one. You have a right to exclude people from entering your property. The P stands for possession. You have a right to occupy your property. And control is do whatever you want with the property within the law. You want to add to it, you pull your permit. You want to tear it down, pull a demolition permit. So your bundle of legal rights is included in the definition of real property. It is the same 5 things here. I just put them in a different order. Now, personal property. Well, okay, before I get into personal property, real property is anything that's attached. Anytime anything's attached to the property, it becomes part of the real property. You build a house on land, it becomes part of the real property. You nail, glue, screw anything to the floors, walls, ceilings, becomes part of that real property. It doesn't matter. If you live in an apartment and you're renting the apartment, anytime you attach anything to the walls or ceilings or anything else, it becomes part of that real property. You might have pictures hanging in your home. When you move, you can take the pictures with you, but the nail has to stay behind. It's attached. You have drapes hanging in your home. Well, when you move, you can take the drapes with you. They're just on those little hooks, but the rods, because they're screwed to the windows, they have to stay behind. Uh-oh, I lost sound, or someone lost sound. Someone lost sound. Can everyone hear me? You can hear me. Did I not lose sound? Am I okay? All right, someone else lost their sound. Okay, thank you very much for that. Let me write her a note. Okay, thank you that you could hear me. So just 1 second. 1 second. Whitney. Check your audio button. Or you might have to sign off. You can't hear me. And back on. Oh, she got her sound back. It was just temporary. Okay. I just didn't know. All right, let's go back. Let me actually clear a couple questions here. All right. Sometimes I don't know if it's me when someone loses sound or it's on their end, so that's why I have to ask and double check to make sure everyone can help me. So now, again, real property is anything that's attached, becomes part of that real property. And no matter how it's attached, becomes part of that real property. You cannot take it with you. Now, there are some exceptions, and I'll talk about that. Now, personal property is anything that's not attached. So highlight, put an X by personal property. Personal property is anything that's not attached, and you can't take that with you. Your furniture, your clothing, your computer, it's all considered personal property. Now, personal property, there's other names for personal property. I want you to remember these names here. I'm going to give you 4 of them. The first one is chattel. You see that a lot on a state exam. Chattel is another name for personal property. Another name for personal property is called emblements. Sorry, I messed that up. Let me clear it. Oops. Do I have my eraser on? Okay. All right. Now, emblements is another name for personal property. Let me show it to you in the book. Skip down under plants, number 2. Fructus industrialis. Emblements are crops, growing crops. They are considered personal property if they started growing. Now, farmland in Illinois is only sold twice a year. It's sold before planting or after harvesting, so there's no dispute. Now, if I sold you my farm, and I have 1,000 acres on my farm that I sold to you, but I planted the crops like the corn or something, and the corn is only like 1 inch high. Because they already started growing, I have a right to come back, even though I sold my farm and we closed on it to you. I have a right to come back and harvest my crops that first year only. Why? Because they started growing and they are considered personal property. Anything that needs watering, nurturing, fertilizing, tending to, those are considered crops and those are considered personal property. Let's go on to conversion is a general name of converting real property into personal property or personal into real. Highlight, put an X by severance. Severance is converting real property to personal property. Real property to personal property. I have something that's built in and it's attached. It's part of the real property. But if I unscrew it, even though it's not attached anymore, it's still sitting in the same place, I just converted real property into personal property, and the process is called severance. Don't forget that. Changing real property to personal property, it's called severance. Now, on the next page where it says annexation, highlight, put an X by that one. Annexation is the process of changing personal property into real property. For example, let's say I want to put up a fence in my yard for my dog. I go to the lumber yard, I buy the fencing material. When I buy it, it's personal property. I throw it in the back of my truck, it's still personal property. I bring it to my yard, I lay it on the grass, it's personal property. But the moment I set the post into the ground, then I attach the fence to the post, I just converted personal property into real property, and that process is called annexation. I don't want you to forget that. Severance is changing real property to personal property. Annexation is changing personal property into real property. Now, the next paragraph where it says a fixture, highlight, put an X by that. Now, a fixture is an item of personal property that's been so attached to the property that by law becomes part of the real property. An example of a fixture, heating systems, plumbing systems, lighting systems. At one time, they were personal property, but once they're attached to the property, they become part of the real property. Now, legal tests of a fixture. Now, courts use these three tests to determine whether an item is real property or personal property. Number one, method of attachment. How permanent is a method of attachment? Two, adaptation to real estate, so being used as real or personal property. And three, agreement between the parties. And the parties agree whether it's real or personal property. Those are very vague, and that's why courts are backed up, trying to determine for years even, what's real and what's personal property. There's a fourth one. I want you to write this down. Number 4 of a test to determine if the item is real or personal property. Number 4. The size of the item, or the cost of the item, the size of the item or the cost of the item does not determine, the size or the cost of the item does not determine whether it's real or personal property. The size or the cost of the item does not determine whether it's real or personal property. A lot of times people, both buyers and sellers, they get in arguments at the closing about what's supposed to be there, and they took something else out, and they have big fights. You know what most real estate agents do? Most of them. They buy $5,000 chandeliers. That's what most agents do. I'll tell you why that happens. Seller's selling their property, and the agent goes list the property, but the seller tells the agent, look, I got this beautiful $5,000 chandelier hanging in a dining room or foyer area, whatever it is. And when I move, I'm going to take this $5,000 chandelier with me. But I'm going to replace it with another light fixture. So the agent says, you know what? That's great. Let me just make a note of it and put it down on the listing information sheet. And they do. In fact, any selling agent that comes in with their buyer the listing agent makes sure it says, just to let you know, this beautiful $5,000 chandelier is going to be gone. When they move out, they're going to replace it with another light fixture. In fact, when the agent writes up an offer for the buyer, he writes down in the contract the dining room chandelier to be removed, replaced with another light fixture. So everyone has an agreement, everyone signed off on it. That's great. A day before the closing, we have what's called a walkthrough, where the buyers walk through the property. And as they're walking through the property, they notice that beautiful $5,000 chandelier is gone. It's been replaced with a light fixture at a Home Depot that costs $125. Guess what? Buyer doesn't like the property anymore. He wants that $5,000 chandelier. It does not look the same. So they get to the closing, and what does the buyer do? They cry to their attorney. They said, oh, they took the chandelier with them. Lawyers, first of all, they go by the law. They read the contract. Well, look, you signed this contract that says that the sellers remove the dining room chandelier and replace it with another light fixture. Did he replace it? He goes, yeah, he did, but I don't like it. I want that $5,000 chandelier. Well, lawyers have an idea. You know, those real estate agents and those sponsoring brokers are making a lot of money. Why doesn't each agent from the buying side and the selling side throw in $1,250 and let each of the sponsoring brokers turn in $1,250 and they have this $5,000 to buy his light fixture? Most agents buy $5,000 chandeliers. Me, in my life, I've never bought a chandelier, any price chandelier, ever. Why? When a seller says, when I move, I'm going to take the chandelier with me. Okay, hold on a second. How long would it take you to get your electrician in here to remove the chandelier and replace it with another light fixture? Oh, he says, I could get it. It might take me about a week. Okay, I tell you what, I'm not putting this property on the market until that's done. Because I tell you why. People see it, they want it. There's an old saying, a fear of loss is a greater motivator than the opportunity to gain. They see it, they want it. Well, I'm not going to let them see it. I do not buy chandeliers. I do not let my agents buy chandeliers. I had one of my agents, this actually happened. It's almost 2 years ago. You know, it's about a year and a half ago. It was in December. She sold a nice property, about $800,000. They had a beautiful $5,000 chandelier in the foyer, and they agreed it's going to be taken out. It's in the contract. Well, to get to the closing, again, the buyer was crying. He wanted that $5,000 chandelier. Well, the other agent agreed to give up $2,500 of his commission. Now they're looking to our office, to my agent in my office, to give up another $2,500. So my agent calls me up. She goes, Sam, the other agent already agreed to give up $2,500. They want me to give up, my agent to give up $1,250, and they want the office to give up $1,250, or they're not going to close. I says, you can't give up $1,250. She started crying, my agent. It was in December. She wanted to have a nice Christmas. She's going to make like $25,000 on this one transaction herself. And she was upset, and she said, I'll take the whole thing, the whole $2,500 out of my end. Nope, you can't. It's not your end till we get ours. So the answer is no, you can't do that. I made her cry some more. Then she says, can you talk to the lawyer? I go, sure. So the buyer's lawyer gets on the line, and he says that, well, you know, he liked that chandelier and he wants that chandelier back. The other agent agreed to give $2,500. Your agent and you have to each give up $1,250. Otherwise, we're not going to close. I told the lawyer, well, since you're not going to close, send my agent back to my office. I said this to him. And he said to me, well, maybe you didn't hear what I said. If your agent and you together don't give up $2,500, we're not going to close. I said, I heard you. And since you're not closing, send my agent back to my office and tell your buyer, not only did they lose that house, they lost their earnest money. They're not getting that back. And they can call up the movers who are parked around the corner ready to move the furniture in with the engine running. They're paying 3 moving guys, who knows how much, to bring in the furniture. Tell them to call up utilities to cancel the utilities because we're not giving up $2,500. Guess what happened? That listing closed. That sale closed without us giving up a dime. The other agent to make his client happy, gave another $1,250. It cost him $3,750. He called me up after the closing. He says, "You cost me $3,750. I would never do business with your office again." I says, "Let me tell you something. If you worked for me right now, in your pocket, you'll have additional $3,750. Why? Because I would not let you pay it, and that property still would have closed. I guarantee it would close. I know that for a fact because I've done this over 40 times. Over 40 times. My agents know me. They call me up, and they always wanted to cut the commission at the closing. No, my agent did their job. Why should they give up their commission? I don't think they should ever give up a dime of their commission. I had one guy twice in my office that I saved his commission. He didn't have to give up a dime. Then he left my office. He went to another company. He's at a closing, and there's a dispute, and they want the office to give up my agent. I mean, not my agent, the other, who used to be my agent, and their office give a total of 1,400. And he calls me up. He says, Sam, can you talk to the attorneys? I says, wait a minute, you don't work for me. You got to have your sponsoring broker call them. He says, yeah, but I did, and he's kind of wishy-washy. I want to give him the 1,400. I want you to do your thing and talk to the lawyers. I can't interfere with another agent from another company. I mean, that could be my license. I says, I'm sorry. He says, this is going to cost me $700. Well, then you shouldn't have left my office. I can't help that. So he wound up paying. I think agents work very, very hard for their commission. I don't think anyone should give anything up. I'll tell you real quick, another one. Wait a minute. Do I have time? Um, I'm going to tell you one real quick story that's actually happened. And my agent stole my office now. This happened about 3 years ago. My agent was working with a client of his. The name is R. Kelly. He bought that sound studio over at 216 South Justine. It's a warehouse sound studio. Sold it for $1.3 million, I think, 1.3 million. It was this agent, he was in my class, he joined my office. His very first transaction was 1.3 million. He's been getting calls, earlier this year from reporters that they want to interview him because he sold them that sound studio, but R. Kelly moved in there, and that's where he got in some trouble and stuff. So my agent sold that property. Now, how we found out about it, he was looking at other properties, and this one agent was showing him one of his listings. And he says, I found a property that will fit your client's need. Would I get half the commission? Now, my agent's brand new, never sold anything. He goes, well, yeah, it's your listing, you get half the commission. And he asked him about 5 times, I'm going to get half the commission. Yeah, it's your listing. So he gave the address to my client, set up the appointment. My agent went there with, I don't think it was R. Kelly. I think it was the manager. It was R. Kelly because they had to sign the contract. And he wound up buying this $1.3 million property. And the other agent kept calling my agent, telling him that I'm still going to get half the commission. And my agent told me about, why does this guy keep bothering you? Then I look up the listing. It did not belong to this agent. It was listed by Coldwell Banker office, not by this agent. He just happened to see it, and he thinks he's going to get half my agent's commission. So, which was like about 20, I think it was like 20, over 27,000 that came to our office, and he wanted half of that. He wanted 13,750 or whatever it was. 13, because he just saw the property. It wasn't his listing. So no, we didn't pay him. I says, we're not going to pay you. And then he filed charges against us with the hearing board. The problem, well, he didn't know this. I serve as one of the judges. I can't serve on anything my office is involved in. I've been doing this for 5 years. So I know all the judges, all the arbitrators and mediators and everything else. So we went to arbitration. And of course, I know all the judges. I've been working with them. I served side by side with them for 5 years. I still work on serve on what's called professional standards for the Chicago Association of Realtors. So they presented the case, the guy, and he says he wanted $13,750, half the commission. So they asked my agent, is he willing to give him anything? My agent says, well, I just want this whole thing to end. I'd like to give him $5,000. And then he asked the owner of the company, are you willing to give him anything? Well, I agree with the 5,000. We'll give him the 5,000. Well, then the arbitrator, she asked me, are you in agreement to give him the 5,000? I go, absolutely not. He did nothing. He doesn't deserve it. It wasn't his listing. Then what do you think he should get? I tell you what he gets. I don't know, I did a Michael Corleone. I says, I tell you what he gets. He gets nothing at all. In fact, what he should do, he should pay for my time, my gas, and my parking to come down here on North Michigan Avenue. Guess what it was mediator that said this. Mediator says, okay, you get nothing. The other agent got nothing. So I think my agent was so proud. He went back to the office. I'm glad he told so many people. He told everyone in the office that he was ready to give up 5,000. Why should he? He didn't do anything wrong. He earned it. He should have had that. So, okay, let's talk about trade fixtures. I'd like you to highlight, put an X by this one. Now, you will get about 4 to 5 questions on a state exam on trade fixtures. A trade fixture is anything used in a trade or business. Trade fixtures are considered personal property, always remain personal property until the lease expires. They are considered personal property. So let me get back to my chalkboard here. Personal property. Chattel is another name that you see on a state exam for personal property. Implements, which are growing crops. Trade fixtures, anything used in a trade or business, is considered personal property. And they always remain personal property until the lease expires. Not when they're installed, not when they default on the rent, when the lease expires. Now, let's say I was to open up I rent your store space to open up a barber shop. I bring in my chairs, my sinks, my mirrors. I install those things. Even though they're installed, they are considered personal property until the lease expires. I told you live in an apartment or you live in a house, anytime you attach anything, it's part of the real property. But trade fixtures, you can always take them with you. By the way, another name, and I want you to remember all of these, another name for trade fixtures is called personalty. You will see that too. So these are different names of personal property. Don't forget these, very important to know these. Got another question before I get to the textbook. Yeah, actually, if you call up the school at the 773-647-1830 or Kim at cresedu.com. I'll put it up again real quick. She'll be able to help you with that. Let me get back to where I put her information with my information. There it is. Now, Kimberly handles the calls and stuff like that, but if you need to talk to Kim, Kimberly will put you in touch with her, and that's Kim's email, Kim at cresedu.com. Okay? Take a screenshot of that so you have that. Okay. Now let's go back to the textbook. So trade fixtures, anything used in a trade or business is considered personal property, always remains personal property until the lease expires. Now, characteristics of real estate. I want you to know these. You're going to see this on a state exam. Let me get rid of my questions here. Now, there are four economic characteristics of real estate, and there are 3 physical characteristics of real estate. These are the 4 economic. Now, on a state exam, they try to get you mixed up. which ones are economic, which ones are fiscal. So let's talk about economic. Highlight, put an X by the first paragraph where it says scarcity. Scarcity means that land is scarce. Land is scarce. 71% of the earth is covered by water. The land that's left over, you can't build on all of it. Something might be out right in the middle of the desert. It might be up on a mountaintop or on an ice tundra. So land is scarce. Highlight, put X by the next paragraph, improvements. By building a improvement on your property, by building a house, a building, a shopping center, you add value to your property. But not only do you add value to your own property, but you also add value to the surrounding properties as well. Highlight, put X by the next paragraph. I'm sorry. It's permanence of investment. Sorry, just drew a blank there. Permanence of investment. When you build something, a house, a building, a shopping center, an office building, whatever you build, you expect it to be there for a long time. You're not building a house and for it to be torn down next year. Permanence of investment. It's going to be there for whatever, 50 years, 100, 200 years. And then the last one is called location. Put an X by that. Now, the three most important things in real estate, of course, is location, location, location. That's what they say. Now, I want to buy a home in Chicago. Chicago's my location. But I don't want to live in downtown Chicago. It's crowded, it's noisy, can't find parking. I want a quiet neighborhood of Chicago. So that quiet neighborhood is my area of preference or my situs. So my location is Chicago, but my area of preference is that quiet neighborhood. Another name for situs, what you will see, let me spell it out for you. Situs is Latin for site. You're going to see this on a state exam. It's another name for area preference, situs. Okay, don't forget that word. Now, those are the four economic characteristics of real estate. More important are the three fiscal characteristics of real estate. So I'd like you to highlight, put an X by these three. Please don't get them mixed up. That's exactly what they try to do on the state exam. So the first one, highlight, put X by immobility. You cannot move land. You cannot move land. You own a house. When you look out the front window, you got a beautiful view of the ocean. You look out the back window, you got a beautiful view of the mountains. If you sold that property and you move, you can't take that view with you. Immobility. Highlight, put an X by indestructibility. The next one, next physical characteristic. Land cannot be destroyed. Land cannot be destroyed. I mean, you can burn down your house and your grass and trees. You still have the land left. You cannot destroy land. You could go on your land with 1,000 dump trucks and a payloader, and you can remove tons and tons and tons of dirt from your land. And you know what you own right now? Land with a big hole in it. Land cannot be destroyed. And then highlight, put an X by uniqueness. Uniqueness means there are no two properties that are the same. No two properties that are the same. You have two houses next to each other. They look identical. But what makes them different, they can't occupy the same space. One's located here, one's located there. Uniqueness. You look at a condo building, hundreds or thousands of units in a condo building. Those units are all the same. No, they're not. One's located occupying this space. One's above it, one's next to it, one's behind it. That's what makes them unique. They can't occupy the same space. Okay, now let's go on to the middle of the next page where it says Illinois real estate law. I'd like you to highlight, put an X by this. You're going to hear this a couple of times. Every state has real estate licensing laws. The purpose of licensing laws is to evaluate the competency of people engaged in a business for the protection of the public, not us, to protect the public. Now, this last two paragraphs here under home ownership, I want you to highlight, put an X by both of these. Now, when someone applies to a mortgage company to get a loan, they want to make sure they could afford the property. And they use what we call qualifying ratios. So let me give you an example of that. Let me go back to my board. Okay. What you need to know, qualify for a mortgage, no more than 28% of someone's gross income before any taxes are paid of their monthly income could go towards our monthly housing costs, which is PITI. Stands for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Principal is the money that you borrow. You have to pay that back with interest. Then you have your property taxes, and then you have your homeowner's insurance. That's on the front end. On the back end, no more than 36% of your gross monthly income goes towards PITI, plus any long-term debt. Long-term debt, things are not going to be paid off in the next year. Credit cards, student loans, car payments, things like that. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Let's say you have a job and you earn $90,000 a year on your job before any taxes are taken out. You divide that by 12 months, that's going to equal $7,500 a month. Now, they say no more than 28% of this could go towards your monthly housing cost, which comes out to $2,100. Bank feels if they go anything higher than that, more likely you're going to default on that mortgage. Last thing a bank ever wants to do is foreclose. They lose money if they foreclose. How a bank makes their money by you making your payments each and every single month. So no more than 28% of your gross monthly income before any taxes are taken out goes towards what we call PITI. PITI, principal. It's the money that you borrow. You have to pay that money back with interest. Say your principal and interest together come out to $1,500 a month. Most of that's all interest, at least in the beginning. Then you have your property taxes. And let's say that's $450 a month. And you have your homeowner's insurance in case the house burns down or someone falls down your steps or anything else. That's your homeowner's insurance. And let's say that costs $90 a month. If I total all these together, I get $2,040. Well, you're under the 2,100, you qualify at least on the front end. Now, let's look on the back end. This is right here, you see. This is your PITI right here. Now, let's you still earn $7,500 a month. No more than 36% of that could go towards your PITI plus any long-term debt, which comes out to $2,700 a month. So let's talk anything that's not going to be paid off in the next year. You got a car payment. And let's say that's $350 a month. You have credit card bills. And your credit cards total $200 a month. And let's say you have a second car payment. Let's say that second car payment is $400 a month. So let me add this PITI right here along with your bills here. And what I get is $2,990. Guess what? You're over the 2,700. You don't qualify to buy this home. They're not going to give you the mortgage. You like this house, you want to buy this house, you know what the bank's going to say? See this car payment over here? Get rid of it. Sell this car off. Get rid of that payment. They'll bring you under the 2,700. Now you qualify. They will tell you, actually, the lender will say, go and buy that car once you close on the property. It's easier to get financing on a car than it is on a home. There's reasons for it because they have to fall into these guidelines. Otherwise, they can't sell it on a secondary market. So long-term debt, PITI, principal, interest, taxes, insurance, plus long-term debt cannot exceed more than 36% of your gross income. Now, investment considerations. Purchasing a home offers several financial advantages to the buyer, possible long-term gain through appreciation, increase in equity as the mortgage is paid off. Now, equity, you need to know that. Equity is the difference between the value of your home and what you owe on your home is called equity. Let's say that your home has a current value of $450,000. And you have a mortgage on it. You owe $360,000. So if you sold your home now and you paid off your mortgage, you're going to have $90,000 left over. That $90,000 is called equity. Again, equity is the difference between the value of your property and what you owe on your property is called equity. Now, there's three different ways that you build up equity. Every time you make a mortgage payment, at least a portion of that, a small portion, goes towards the principal. That's one way of building equity slowly. Another way of building equity is making improvements. Anything that adds square footage. You add a bedroom, I add a bathroom, you finish up the attic into living space. That's another way of building up equity. And also another way of building equity, just by the neighborhood or that house appreciating in value, you build up equity that way as well. I would not forget that because quite often, I believe all of you will see equity on the state exam. Now, determining seller's equity, I already went over there. You could go over that on your own. Highlight those bullets because I just discussed that. Now, let's talk about tax benefits. Now, there are a lot of benefits with owning a home. Homeowners may deduct from their income some or all of the mortgage interest paid. You can also deduct real estate taxes and other expenses as well. Actually, I will put an X by all three of those. I'm talking about other expenses, and we'll get into this in chapter 6. I'm talking points, loan origination fee. That's what I'm talking about. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Let me go back to the board. The other example I gave you that you had a job and you earned $90,000 a year. And let's say last year you lived in an apartment. And let's say by chance you're in a 25% tax bracket. Well, 25% of 90,000 comes out to 22,500. Oops, 22,500 that you had to pay in taxes. 22,500 that you had to pay in taxes. Now, you still earn 90,000 a year before any taxes are taken out. Well, last year you bought a home. You get to deduct all your interest that you get to deduct plus your property taxes. The other example, I said you're paying $1,500 a month in taxes and principal, right? I mean interest and principal and interest. Well, $1,500 a month, that's $18,000 a year. Almost all of that, at least in the first few years, is interest. So you get to deduct all the interest you pay. So let's say your interest out of the 18,000, a good guess is about 17,000. So you get to minus your interest, which now leaves us with $73,000. Guess what you also get to deduct? The property taxes. Your property taxes I use as 450,000 on that last example. So 450 times 12 comes out to $5,400. You get to deduct that as well. So you don't pay taxes on 90,000. You pay taxes as if you made 67,600. If you're still in a 25% tax bracket, 25% of that is 15,000 and 7,600, 15, 16. It's about, you're going to be paying about 16,800 approximately. That's what you're going to be paying in taxes, 16,800, not 22,500. This is the benefit of owning a home. And those of you out there that already own a home, you already know this. This is what you get to deduct. Now, understand one thing. All of you, I don't want any of you to start giving any tax advice unless you're a tax accountant or a CPA. I don't want any of you to ever give out any legal advice unless you're an attorney at law. Okay? Don't go beyond your scope of authority. That's what I want to make sure. So let's get back to the textbook. Capital gains exclusion. I like you to highlight number 1, 2, and 3. This is something that you see on a state exam. Every homeowner in the United States, every homeowner in the United States can deduct or not pay taxes or profit on not get taxed on the profit on the sale of their home. Now, here's what I want you to know. Let me write it out for you. Here's what I need you to know. If you happen to be single, you get a $250,000 deduction on the sale of your home. If you happen to be married, filing jointly, you get a $500,000 exclusion on a profit on the sale of your home. This is available to everyone in this country. The rules are this: must live on the property for 2 years out of the last 5 years. So let me give you an example. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you something. Calculators, when you take the state exam, and I want you to, well, I'm going to tell you something in a moment. On the state exam, no cell phones are allowed on the state exam. You cannot bring a cell phone with you. Now, if you do bring your cell phone, they make you lock it up. It better be turned off. You're taking a test in another room. Your phone rings, and you're in another room, and it's locked up. You failed the state exam. So I don't suggest you bring that with you. Now, you're not allowed cell phones. You're not allowed translator calculators, no financial calculators, where you can plug in the formulas, and no calculators that have an adding machine tape. Now, what you can bring with you, here's what you need to do by Wednesday's class, all of you. You need to go to Walgreens or CVS Pharmacy, and I need you to pick up a cheap $3 or $4 calculator, just a simple basic calculator like this I'm showing you. That's it. That's what you're allowed on. This is, you can do all your math on this. Anything more than that, they're going to give you a piece of paper and a pencil, and you can do all your math, all 13 math problems longhand. I need you to get this by Wednesday's class because I need you to get used to this calculator. I don't want to see you with cell phones. Well, I can't see you, so I don't know. I don't know if you have cell phones, but I wish I could see you, but I can't. So make sure you get that by Wednesday. A simple, basic $3 or $4 calculator. That's all you're allowed to bring with you on the state exam. So let me give you an example of this problem right here. Now, this is called a capital gain. Now, let's say I bought a home and I paid $100,000 for it years ago. And I sold it today for $400,000. Well, I made a profit of $300,000. I had to pay taxes on that $300,000. If I'm in 25% tax bracket, guess what? I have to pay $75,000. Now, that's what I would have to pay, $75,000. Now, let's take the same situation. I sold my property for $400,000. I paid originally $100,000. So I made a profit of $300,000. But I'm going to use my tax exclusion, okay? I'm using my capital gain exclusion. I'm single. I get a $250,000 exclusion. I don't have to pay anything on the first $250,000, as long as I live there for at least 2 years. I do have to pay on the difference, $50,000. Let's say I'm still in a 25% tax bracket. 25% of $50,000 means I have to pay $12,500, not $75,000. By the way, if I was married filing jointly, I would not have to pay any taxes on my capital gain. Every homeowner is allowed to do this. Every 2 years, as long as you live on a property, it's your primary resident, you live on the property for at least 2 out of the last 5 years. Now, say you only lived there out of 1 year out of the 2 years. They prorate that at 50%. They were prorated. So I want you to be a little bit familiar with this because you're going to see this. Capital gains. Oops. Now, how did I get this question in here? Oh, darn it. I did that. Here's a question I'd like to go over with you. The bottom of this page. Oops, I went too far. Give me a second, I'll come back to it. It's bottom of this page. Okay, question. My wife and I bought a house 2 years ago, lived there for 1.5 years, then moved out. We continue to own the house and currently have a rental tenant. If we decide to sell the house, is there any way we could avoid tax on a capital gain? I know that you have to live in a house for 2 years to earn the full capital gain. Okay, here's the question. Here's the answer to it. There is a provision in a tax law that gives certain taxpayer a prorated exclusion. I don't have enough information to determine whether you qualify. To get a prorated exclusion, you would have to demonstrate that you were forced to move out of the house, the job related to health reasons. So if there's a reason, then you could use that. And now you only lived there for 1.5 years, 18 months out of 24. They will prorate 75% of it, 3/4. It says that right there. So my accountant gave me that information. Now, let's skip down to exchanges. I want you to highlight, put an X by the next one, two, under exchanges, and the next two paragraphs as well, where it says to qualify as tax deferred exchange and the IRS requires. So let me talk about this. Let me go to my chalkboard. Let me talk about this a little bit. Now, this is called, actually, it's really called the 1031 tax exchange. 1031 tax exchange. And what I'm going to give you some information now. It may be very, very helpful if you're going to be planning on working with investors. Now, this only applies to any investment property, any investment property. I'm talking about apartment buildings, shopping centers, office building. I'm also talking about a one-bedroom condo that you own that you're renting out. You can do a 1031 tax exchange. But let's say you bought a building several years ago and you paid for this building, apartment building, $600,000. And you sold it today for $2 million. You made a profit of $1.4 million. You have to pay taxes on that 1.4 million. You're probably going to be paying over 400,000 in profit. I mean, in taxes on that property. But what the IRS states, if you take this $1.4 million and invest it into another property, you could defer your taxes. I just want to make it clear. It's not that you're going to not pay your taxes, you get to defer it. So the rules are this. You have 45 days to identify up to 3 different properties. And you have 180 days to close. That 45 days is included in the 180 days. So what you do is this money's held by actuary, and then what happens, you have a 45 days at least to identify which properties. You write up a contract, then you have to close in 180 days from the time you sold, and you can defer your taxes, which means you take this 1.4 million and you invest it into another property. You're deferring your taxes. Now, IRS is very, very kind to real estate investors, more than any, compared to any other investment. Because they say like for like property, which means that you can sell an apartment building and buy a shopping center. You can sell a shopping center, buy office building, sell office building, buy a land for investment, whatever it was. Real estate is real estate. That's not true with any other investment. This 1031 exchange, you could, let's say you bought gold, you invested in gold, then you sold it and you got a profit. To avoid paying taxes, you had to take that money and buy more gold. You own a twin-engine jet plane that you had for investment. You made a profit on it when you sold it. Well, you had to invest into another twin-engine jet plane. You can't buy 2 single-engine jet planes. You can't buy a 4-engine jet plane. You sold a twin engine, you have to buy another twin engine. Same thing with artwork. Let's say years ago you bought a Picasso painting for $1 million. You sold it today for $3 million. You made a profit of $2 million. You got to take that money in, and if you want to avoid capital gains, you have to invest and buy another painting, not another piece of artwork. What if you want to buy Michelangelo's sculpture? Well, sculpture and painting is art, not to the IRS. You sell a painting, you have to buy another painting. If you sold a sculpture, you have to buy another sculpture. but real estate is real estate. And they allow you to invest into any type of real estate. Now, something else I want you to know. Say you wanted to, you made a profit of 1.4 million. You want to take some cash out. You want to take $100,000 or $200,000 to pay down, excuse me, pay down some of your debt and maybe put money away for your college kids or something like that. Well, you can take cash out. You are allowed to take cash out. But any cash that you take, well, cash is called, and I want you to remember this, it's called boot. And boot is taxable. So you take 100 or 200 out, pay out some debt, you're going to have to pay taxes on it at whatever tax bracket that throws you into. Okay? So that's what you need to know about capital gains. Question. After you invest into another property, you have to pay taxes on the... No, you don't have to pay taxes. That's what this is referred to. Not until you sell that property. Let me give you an example. I took that 1.4 million. I bought a property for 5 million. So I had that property for a while at 5 million. I sold it later for 10 million. I take the profit and I reinvest into another building. So you keep rolling it over, investing into a higher property. But then years later, when I decide to sell the property at 20 million because I rolled it over so many times, IRS says, well, you got $20 million, but you only paid 600,000 because you kept rolling it over. So you're going to have to pay taxes on 19,400,000. Believe me, IRS is always going to collect the taxes. They always will. All you're doing is deferring your taxes. Now, regarding the 1031 tax exchange, when are taxes actually due for investors? When you sell the profit, when you sell the property, you take your profit. That's when you pay it. If you don't take the profit for 10 years, 20 years, you don't pay until you take the profit. Okay? Now, what about death? Who pays? Your heirs will pay. So you bought this building for 600. You kept rolling it over. Now you got $20 million worth of investment. And then you die, and that's what happens. You die. Then your relatives sell the property for 20 million. They're going to have to pay the taxes on the profit over your original investment of 600,000. That's what happens. That's exactly what happens. You keep working and saving and rolling this money over, and then what happens? You die. Then the relatives will fight over who gets what. That's what happens. Okay, tax deductions. Now, let me go over these bullets here with you. At the bottom of this page, homeowners may deduct from their gross income any of the following. I told you, you could deduct any real estate taxes that you pay. You could deduct any interest that you pay. Loan origination fees, discount points, and prepayment penalties. Oh, that second bullet, sorry. Mortgage interest payments are tax deductible on almost first and second homes, not third homes. Not third homes. First and second homes only. So, now let's talk about homeowners insurance. It says, well, most highlight protects by that paragraph. Most homeowners, they have what's called co-insurance. See, those of you that own a home right now, the day you close on that property, you have to get a insurance policy, homeowners insurance policy, naming the lender as a insuree along with yourself. In case the house burns down, the lender gets paid the mortgage first. If there's any money left over, then it goes to the homeowner. Now, they call this co-insurance clause because no one's insured for 100% replacement cost. Every homeowner only has 80% replacement cost. Only 80%. Now, what happens if your home burns down to the ground? There's nothing left at all of your home, and you only have 80% replacement coverage. Well, guess what? You still own the land. Land cannot be destroyed. So you still own the land. So that's why we have co-insurance. It's called co-insurance clause. You could get 100% replacement coverage, but the bank's not going to, or the insurance company's not going to give you more than the property's worth. And besides that, instead of costing you 12 or 1,500 a year, your insurance is going to cost you probably about, about 5, 6, 7,000 a year. And they're not going to pay you more than that. So that's why we have co-insurance. Now, I think, yeah, flood insurance. Let's go to this next page. Now, the FEMA, the Army Corps of Engineers, put together this big map of the United States, and they mark down certain areas that are prone to flooding. Now, in the Chicagoland area, we have a couple of floodplain areas along the Des Plaines River and along the Fox River. Now, if you buy a home that's located in a floodplain area, besides homeowners insurance, you have to get flood insurance too. Otherwise, you're not going to get the loan. So, and that's it about that one. And that's the end of chapter 1. Any of you have any questions on chapter 1? Remember, at the end of every chapter, we got a list of questions here. And the answers are right after this, too. Oh, where's the answers? They took out the answers. So guess what? You got to work on this. And work on the chapter quizzes, too. All right?